One, two, three, four.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I hope you all are having a fantastic 3-day weekend, Labor Day weekend here in the United States of America. We are celebrating our Labor Day, which usually means that, we all have, an extra day off work, which is always nice. I'm coming through to talk about a very interesting report out. It's hit the airwaves. But before I get into the report, I want to give a special shout out to Khalil Amani. If you've not had an opportunity to see Khalil Amani's new channel, Khalil Amani's World 100, definitely check it out. And check out his latest video, which I am putting in the live chat for those of you to click and go view. Excuse me. I also want to give a special shout out to Layla Wills. Layla Wills did a live stream earlier today. She talked about the whole Africa Bambaataa situation, the recent, the recent news in regards to the John Doe lawsuit, an FCC complaint that was also made against Funkmaster Flex, radio DJ Flex, for some statements that he made on live radio in New York. And also, she talked a little bit about her ongoing federal lawsuit against Ronald Savage, the bee stinger, okay, who, you know, comes live on YouTube drinking so-called apple juice, makes an absolute fool of himself, and says he's on a closure tour. And if you're familiar with, the Africa Bambaataa saga, Ronald Savage was one of the original people who came out and said that Africa Bambaataa did sexual things to him when he was a minor. And he's now changed his story completely to the point of even defending Africa Bambaataa. It's just really strange. But anyway, also want to give a special shout out to the Hood Smokers podcast, who's, been tapping in, plugging in lately. I've also been tapped in, plugged in. And when I tell you, I was laughing my behind off yesterday, day before yesterday, even. There was a video that the Hood Smokers podcast had did, a parody of sorts of Ronald Savage, and it was hilarious, down to the hat, the drinking of apple juice, all of that. It was really, really funny. Check it out when you get an opportunity. The Hood Smokers podcast. Very, very interesting content. All right, folks. Now let's get into this. So there's been a very interesting report circling today about the Boeing Starliner and strange noises emanating from the craft. It's specifically from the Starliner craft. Now, we did a story here a few days ago where we talked, we reviewed the press conference that NASA executives held in regards to the Boeing Starliner, and the fact that we have two astronauts that are stranded in space right now. They took the Starliner up to the International Space Station, and they are now stuck in the International Space Station, and will be returning back to Earth next year, in February. There's been a lot of problems that have plagued the Boeing Starliner craft. Everything from, leaks, helium leaks, to issues with the thrusters. And the thrusters are very, very critical for spacecraft to be able to dock properly, undock properly, and to be able to return to Earth properly. And with, being the fact that we live in the shadow of the Challenger incident, the Columbia incident, many of us who in one lifetime witnessed the deaths of several astronauts, one when the Challenger blew up due to the O-ring back in 85, 86, and then Columbia um, exploded during re-entry to Earth. I lived to see both of these incidents happen, and we live in the shadow of those incidents. And I think those incidents weigh heavily on NASA's decision to ensure that, Sonny and Butch, the two Boeing Starliner astronauts who took the Starliner to space, to the International Space Station, that they come home alive. Now, Boeing and NASA executives have absolutely, it's been reported that there was tense meetings over how to bring both Butch and Sonny home after they were stranded at the ISS, at the International Space Station. It's been reported that both Boeing and NASA confirmed that high-level meetings between both Boeing and NASA, these two organizations, descended into straight-up arguments and yelling even over whether to bring the astronauts home on the troubled Boeing Starliner that brought them to the ISS on its first crewed mission, which was considered a test flight. Now, a NASA executive has reported that it was, quote, heated. There were heated conversations, and that Boeing was convinced that the Starliner was in good enough condition to bring the astronauts home, and that NASA strongly disagreed, and that the thinking was that Boeing was being wildly irresponsible. Now, NASA astronauts Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams were flown to space on Boeing Starliner on June the 5th, 2024, for a mission that was initially supposed to last 8 days. But the Starliner experienced helium leaks and thruster issues that prompted NASA and Boeing to investigate the issue for weeks. Ultimately, NASA decided to tap Elon Musk's SpaceX, the SpaceX Crew 9 Dragon mission, Boeing's main space rival, to shuttle the astronauts home next year. The Starliner will make an uncrewed return, meaning there will be no humans on the craft as it returns to Earth. It's been reported that Boeing was not happy with the decision, and Boeing reportedly made it perfectly clear to NASA that a headline, what's the headline if there's a catastrophic failure? If not, Boeing killed 2 astronauts. It's NASA killed 2 astronauts. So no, it's better safe than sorry. In other words, Boeing, it's been reported that they are being wildly irresponsible. And you all look at the practice that Boeing applies to their jets, to their aircraft. They've got big problems here on the home front when it comes to their aircraft. And not only that, they've spent $1.2 billion on the Starliner program. And we've got situations with whistleblowers reporting very sketchy behavior from this huge organization, right? So the feeling at Boeing, it's been reported that the successful return of the Starliner is going to show NASA up. All right. It's going to show NASA up, and NASA's like, no, we don't agree with this, right? And Boeing feels that NASA's being overly cautious. But there's been a lot of requests to Boeing for comments on the report. Boeing doesn't have anything to say. They have had no comment thus far. So anyway, we now go to this. We now circle to this. There is some sort of odd noise that is coming from the troubled Starliner capsule. This particular craft is slated to leave the International Space Station on September 6th. It's going to be returning to Earth on an autopilot. But early this morning, astronauts began to report that there is a strange noise coming from the Boeing Starliner. And we're going to listen to this piece of audio. Now, here's the concerning thing. Here's the very, very concerning thing about the Starliner. It is docked to the International Space Station right now. So, God forbid, if something happens to that craft while it is attached to the ISS, what does that mean? Is there potential that if that craft was to have some sort of malfunction, would it affect the International Space Station as a whole? That's a big, big concern. Anyway, let's listen to this piece of audio. It's about a minute 45. The astronauts are reporting a strange solar like pinging sound that appears to be coming from this craft.
Houston on 2, got a question about the Starliner.
Houston's with you, Butch. Go ahead.
There's a strange noise coming through the speaker, and I didn't know if you could connect into the Starliner and let me keep mic and let you hear. I don't know what's making it, but I don't know if it's something that maybe is connected between here and there, making that happen. But anyway, can you do that?
We can configure that, Butch. Give us a minute, and I'll call you back when it's ready.
Okay.
Station Houston on 2. We're configured for audio via hardline and CST. If you want to give us a call.
Okay, I'm in Starliner, and how do you read?
5x5. How many?
Okay, I'm gonna keep the mic up next to the speaker.
Copy.
Hear that?
At negative, Butch. We did not hear anything. All right, Butch, that one came through. It was kind of like a pulsing noise, almost like a sonar ping.
Yeah, I'll do it one more time, and I'll let y'all scratch your heads to see if you can figure out what's going on. Here we go. All right, over to you. Tell us if you figure it out.
Yep, good recording. Thanks, Butch. We will pass it on to the team and let you know what we find. And Butch, just to make sure I'm on the same page, this is emanating from the speaker in Starliner. You don't notice anything else, any other noises, any other weird configs in there? Okay, thank you.
Now, that's very scary. All right. So again, U.S. astronaut Barry Wilmore, he called NASA ground crew early this morning asking for help with what appeared to be a repetitive knocking sound that was coming from the Boeing Starliner craft. This recording, you obviously hear in the recording, Wilmore asked NASA crew in Houston to configure their call so that he could show them the noise, which he says is coming from the speaker inside of the Starliner. And then a repetitive clanging sound can be heard. The crew member describes it as sounding almost like a sonar ping. This mysterious sound, it could have a very mundane explanation, but who knows? There's been so much mystery and questions, that surrounds this craft, which is scheduled to again undock on September 6th for an automated, uncrewed return to Earth, leaving, Sunita Williams and Butch essentially on the International Space Station with no way home until SpaceX Crew Dragon 9 craft comes back in February. Now, Boeing again has been just swelled with scrutiny lately, right? This brought a lot of probably unwanted attention to Boeing. But again, there's been at least a dozen Boeing whistleblowers that have come forward citing concerns over Boeing's quality assurance process and culture since an incident occurred with Alaska Airlines. And this aerospace giant has been under investigation by multiple federal agencies. Even last month, Boeing pled guilty to a criminal fraud conspiracy to avoid a criminal trial in connection with a Justice Department investigation into two deadly crashes involving the company's 737 MAX jetliners. Now, this criminal case related to, again, two 737 MAX crashes that happened in Indonesia and Ethiopia back in 2018 and 2019, in which 346 people were killed, leading to demands from the victim's family for Boeing to face prosecution. It even a lot of this legal, a lot of the legal situation that's going on with Boeing even helped to usher in a new CEO, who says they're going to try to, Kelly Ortberg says, "Hey, I'm going to right the ship. We're going to get this ship running straight." In a letter to employees on his first day on the job, he acknowledged that, quote, "We clearly have a lot of work to do in restoring trust," end quote. 346 people killed. 346 people. How many years have it's not even been just the quality assurance process that's under scrutiny. I mean, the whistleblowers that seem to come up dead. It's so serious in the aerospace community, I guess you could say. It gets so serious that whistleblowers end up unalive by whistleblowing because they want to save the lives. They want to save human beings' lives, especially when they see something that's blatant, something wrong that's being done blatantly wrong, and they want to right that. And it's not been just one whistleblower. We've had several whistleblowers that ended up dead. And, also, I want you all to think about the experimental aspect of Boeing and Lockheed Martin and these aerospace giants. Remember the story of Mike Herrera, who went on the Sean Ryan show, SRS. He talked about an incident when he was in Indonesia. He was on a mission with his team and came upon a flying disc that was hovering in Indonesia and wasn't making a sound. And there were human beings that were taking in huge boxes and putting it on a ramp that lifted up to this craft that didn't make any noise, didn't even have an attached wire, somehow hovering as like almost like magic. Taking this equipment into the craft, coming back down, this equipment being loaded onto this ramp, being brought up into the craft, and then coming back down. And it was, he suspects it was involving human trafficking. But this particular craft looked to him, when he spoke on it, to be man-made of some type. There was actually rivets, et cetera, et cetera. We know with some, with a lot of UFO craft, a lot of times there are no rivets. It looks like it's been made out of candle wax. It's one whole piece, sort of a thing. But this one seemed to have lines and rivets and looks like it had potentially have been man-made. And there were men that were on this craft that even accosted him and his team and took their guns, took pictures of their IDs, took pictures of them. And he felt he was lucky that he even survived. He was lucky that this whole team survived. Later on, his photos, his camera, and the pictures that he took disappeared. Again, this was Michael Herrera, who has not only been on the Sean Ryan show, but has also been on Cosmic Disclosure on Gaia. But again, you all, let's listen to these very strange sounds again.
Houston on 2, got a question about Starliner.
Houston's with you, Butch. Go ahead.
There's a strange noise coming through the speaker, and I didn't know if you could connect into the Starliner and let me keep Mike and let you hear it. I don't know what's making it, but I don't know if it's something that maybe is connected between here and there, making that happen. But anyway, can you do that?
We can configure that, Butch. Give us a minute, and I'll call you back when it's ready.
Okay.
Station Houston on 2, we're configured for audio via hardline and CST, if you want to give us a call.
Okay, I'm in Starliner, and how do you read?
5x5, how many?
Yes, sir. Okay, I'm gonna keep the mic up next to the speaker.
Copy.
Hear that?
At negative, Butch, we did not hear anything.
That.
All right, Butch, that one came through. It was kind of like a pulsing noise, almost like a sonar ping.
Yeah, I'll do it one more time, and I'll let y'all scratch your heads and see if you can figure out what's going on. Here we go. All right, over to you. Tell us if you figure it out.
Yep, good recording. Thanks, Butch. We will pass it on to the team and let you know what we find. And Butch, just to make sure I'm on the same page, this is emanating from the speaker in Starliner. You don't notice anything else, any other noises, any other weird configs in there?
Sure, nothing else. Everything else is normal.
Okay, thank you.
Now imagine being in the International Space Station and you're hearing this. You're already on edge because of all of the problems that have plagued this particular craft. But here it is, docked to the ISS. And it's very possible that it puts their lives in danger. Now, I brought up the craft that we were talking about in Indonesia that Michael Herrera described, right? Because, again, we're talking about aerospace here. Companies like Lockheed, companies like Boeing. I want you all to listen to this. Shout out to the Sean Ryan Show.
For years, there's been a stigma to it. For years, there's been a giggle effect because of little green men and flying saucers and all that. I myself never thought to this day that I'd ever see anything like this. So going back to the event, we decided to get in the tactical column and approach this, right? And we got down the slope, and it's just like a clearing and just has this big opening. It's almost a little bit more than a football field because this craft took up a majority of that.
So let's just back up for a minute. Let's describe the setting, because at first you said there were helos doing racetracks around. Is this the same opening that you described earlier that you were watching helos drop supplies?
No.
Okay.
So where this was happening was Southwest, at least where the helo insertion points were with the LZs that they were setting up, and they were flying very low in consideration, right? So, and the reason why I know this is because I asked the pilots after this, because I was in the officers' mess and I knew their call signs, and I approached them and I asked them very respectfully if they noticed anything strange. None of them said anything.
Okay.
So I was trying to see if they could get a view of a topside, because this is just something that's crazy, right?
Yeah.
So also their call signs all stuck out too, because pilots like to do crazy stuff with their call signs, so it was very easy to track them down. But having this happen on the north part of the slope and it goes down, and obviously, the way it was transitioning colors, which was kind of the way that it appealed, because is transitioning for a light matte black, or no, sorry, a light matte gray to a dark matte black, and just kind of ranging in between, right?
Let's rewind a little bit before we get into the description.
Okay.
How far? So, what was the activity with all the other helicopters? Were they active at the time that you saw the
Honestly,
UAP?
When we started going down there, no.
Okay.
And I don't know because obviously we're occupied with this.
How far do you think it was?
So from the LZ where we were at was 300 meters roughly. Okay. Plus the slope that was concealing plus vegetation. Down the slope, it was like 400 meters maybe. So we got close. We trucked down quite a bit.
Okay.
About 150 meters outside, 150, 200, right? Halfway. And
so maybe about a click away.
Possibly. Yeah.
At
The craft itself might have been a click out.
Okay.
Yeah. And as like I said, the reason why I know how big this thing was because.
Did you see it as you crested the hill?
Yes, I did. And that's where I took videos and pictures of this thing. That's how I was able to see it because, taking pictures of the chaos going behind and everything, you see the rubble, burning buildings, flooding and all that kind of stuff. And then you turn around and I'm like.
So you crest this hill.
Yep.
You look down into the valley.
Yep.
And there's a clearing.
There's a clearing
with a UAP.
Yes.
Just sitting there.
Sitting there, hovering. Rotating clockwise. Yep. And that's in transition, this color spectrum I was telling you too. And that's why it's something that stuck out. It's not a building, it's not something that you're used to seeing. Maybe topside, it could have looked like a building or something that, I don't know. I don't have that perspective. I wasn't a pilot or anything, but I can tell you from our point of view, it's something that it looked very unnatural and abnormal. And that's what got our curiosity to go investigate this. Now, normally because we would have had comms, you're damn right, we'd have called it in. Report something suspicious. Maybe get some eyes on a helo, get a hold of their call signs and try to do them fly around, and they never did. And obviously we didn't have comms to do it, but they were more occupied with what was going on behind us. So when we trekked down and got around 150 to 200 meters from it, and this is an opening, by the way, there's no tactical advantage being in this situation because you don't have cover. It's jungle. You have concealment, but this kind of concealment with vegetation is not bulletproof.
Mm-hmm.
So when we trekked up close, and we were attack column, so obviously you have points here, right, each Marine. So you have visuals of the sides. Somebody has point and somebody has the rear. And all of a sudden we're enveloped by this military force I still to this day don't know who they are. And
how close did you get?
To the craft?
To the craft.
Roughly 200 meters, 150, 200.
Did you get to the bottom of the hill?
Yes.
So you could see, you saw the top of it, and then you could see underneath of it.
And underneath of it had this platform that was on the ground that was separate from this craft hovering. And it was very weird to see. And I was like, okay, I don't know if that's kind of like a cement pad or something. I don't know if it was like a helo pad or anything like that at first. But then started seeing how the material kind of looked very similar to what the craft was. It's like, well, that's separate. So you have something that's on the ground, stationary, and then you have something that's up top, and it's just rotating in a clockwise position. So right when we got close to it, at least 150, 200 meters out, then all of a sudden we were engaged, at least not in a hostile manner, at least, not gunfire or firefight or anything like that. But the way that these guys moved was so fluid, it was so still, it was very, very, very smooth. And it kind of indicated to me, after thinking about it for several years, is that these guys had done it for a while because of how smooth this operation was. Mm-hmm. So when we were in a tactical column going towards the center of this thing, they actually came from the flanks, but it was more of a diagonal, like a corner of the room, so to speak, right? For them, at a tactical advantage, they have interlocking fields of fire on every single person, and they had a team of 8, right? And the gear that they had was black OTV vests. They had black camouflage utilities.
What you're saying is there would have been no they were professionals.
Yes,
there would have been no Mexican standoff where if they fired, they're shooting into their other squad. They had perfect angles.
Yes, they did.
To where both sides could engage you.
Yes. Team of 4. So it was like a fire team element.
Without worrying about a blue on blue situation.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, with that being said, because as they approached us, you'll hear the safeties flip off. Now, your attention to detail, when you're seeing this kind of stuff, your sensors are very heightened, so you can pick up. I know you being a combat veteran, you know all about that. Your heightened sense of awareness is going through astronomical changes. To
hypervigilant.
Yes. So you can hear stuff a lot clearer. And that's when you kind of picked up the hum that this object was doing, along with these guys flipping their safeties off, especially M4s. You know, it's very distinct sound. Anybody in this room who's held M4s and has shot them, M16s, things like that, it's very distinct sound to flipping it off. So we kind of knew, and they started yelling at us. You know, they were like, you know, you're not supposed to fucking be here. What the fuck are you guys doing here? Who the fuck are you with? You know, so they knew they were using the kind of lingo that we were using too, especially in the military. So it made me think that at some point these guys actually were uniformed military at one point.
Any accents?
Not accents. It's just like American dialects, how you and I are talking. Very, you know, at one point they said they were going to smoke us. They could throw us out of a helicopter. It's very easy to get lost in the jungle out here. You know, they kept saying stuff like that. So after they enveloped us, they all pretty much got in line. They told us to put our weapons. So we all got in line as well. And we had our hands up. We had our weapons slung. And they're having two guys watch while there's a guy basically taking our magazines out of our vest. And they're throwing them on the deck and they're kicking them away so we don't have time to react. They also, at the same time, the first thing they did was obviously take our weapon and clear it. But they took the magazine out and they actually held it in a way to where they could pull a charging handle and collect the round and have it not hit the deck. So the way that these guys operated was very smooth. It's very calculated, very precise. You could tell they've done this a lot, or they've rehearsed it a lot. You know, especially combat operations, you're doing terrain model rehearsals. You're doing rehearsals, whether you're clearing rooms, trying to figure all that kind of stuff out. These guys kind of did the same thing, I'm assuming, because of how smooth it was. And because, you know, as well as I do, you have new guys that join a unit and they're not that fresh. You know, they're very choppy because they have the basic understanding of either how to stack up and do room clearing. And the guys that have done it and been through combat deployments and all that, they're very kind of methodical, very smooth because they know what to expect. These new guys, it's not the same thing. You could tell these guys were seasoned. So as they did that, they actually, each Marine had two guys on them, plus one that was taking the stuff off of them. They actually knew where our military IDs were because in Marine Corps order, you have to have them in your left breast pocket.
So there were 15 of these guys, 3 on each Marine.
No. So they had other guys right here, and they had 3 that were just going through each Marine.
Okay.
While other people were holding each Marine at gunpoint. And they're not like super close to us range wise with, because if you get a muzzle close, I mean, it's easy to grab it and, kind of fend off, especially with a rifle. But these guys were off at a standoff distance that even if you try to move, they could smoke you.
One search team of 3 guys.
Yes.
And then the rest of the squad was aimed in on you. Okay.
Yeah. So, and again, they're not anywhere where they could actually, there was people behind us because obviously if they had to engage, they're going to hit one of their own guys probably. So it was more like they were kind of moving the same way through all of us, all 6 of us, taking our stuff, taking pictures of our military IDs, So they had like these devices that kind of look like a very thin, it looked like a smartphone modern day right now, because in 2009, it wasn't the case. I think the most high-tech thing they had at that time were maybe Blackberries, but they're bulky at that point with the ball. And then they had their flip phone razors and things like that. But these look like something you'd see today. And they were taking pictures of military IDs, and they had some other device that was like remind me of a BAT system. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Describe it.
It's like a biometrics tracking system. So what it does is when you come across with an insurgent, you can take pictures of their face, their retinas, fingerprints.
Yeah,
something like that. But they were trying to scan our IDs with this thing, and it wasn't working. So they're kind of getting frustrated with it. So as this is going on,
did they collect biometrics from you?
No.
Okay.
No. They took pictures of us, but that may be enough. And then they took our IDs, because some people I talked to that are in the special operations community with that, they said, yeah, we have the ability to scan IDs, and it tells us everything about you, military IDs, driver license, things like that. So it's very high speed stuff. I mean, and considering this was in 2009 compared to now, I mean, of course, they had this thing that they were using to load up stuff. It's very advanced physics, something hovering off the ground, not making any sound, but an audible hum, like a guitar amp or something that's like a transformer.
So it wasn't like, it didn't sound like a jet.
No.
It didn't sound like a helicopter.
Hell no.
There was no engine noise.
Nope.
Just a hum.
Just an audible hum. It's very creepy to see because it's not normal.
Was it like a bassy hum?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Like a guitar. Like if you were to unplug it, I mean, it wasn't the same pitch, but it was like the same kind of sound, same kind of noise that it emitted. And so as they're searching us, we're watching this thing happen. And that's when we started seeing trucks come from our left and go onto this platform. And they were up armored 350s. I know exactly what 350s are. They were kind of beefier trucks. They were matte black. When they were coming at us and they go left, And I was glancing between what was going on in front of us with these guys, and then all of a sudden glancing over to what was going on behind them. And that's when I started seeing the key details of this thing. Like it had like a scale pattern on it, kind of like an octagonal, because the craft itself was like an octagonal shape where you could see points. Had a pyramid structure on top that was black, and you can see the shadowing of it as it rotated. But it was rotating very slow. And then it had like these vents on every single corner on the middle part of these the panels anyway. There was like a Vanta black. It was like a dark black that would like absorb light. Very weird.
What do you mean by that? A dark black that would absorb light.
So, if you ever familiar with the BMW, they painted Vanta black. It was like a very super dark black. It's not like a reflective material at all.
The matte black.
Yeah, but very, very, very even darker than matte black.
Okay.
Like you can shine a light at it and it won't even illuminate.
Like the Batmobile.
Kind of something like that. But even it was like very dark. So, I can describe it as like the Vanta black.
Okay.
And so
when you mean absorb light, you're saying if I shine a laser on it, you might not even see the laser.
Correct.
Or it would be very dull.
Correct.
Okay.
Something like that. So we're watching these vehicles, right? These trucks. Now, the thing I would say on the front of them, because Humvees, the military has, they have the IR lights on the front near the headlights that you can drive at nighttime with your knots. So they had the same thing because they had the same kind of slits that had the IR lights. But they had weapon cases in the back of each truck bed. And, you could store like a couple hundred weapons, maybe 100 weapons, maybe a platoon, a company size element. And it was the same Pelican casings that we would use to store stuff when they were transporting, so very big cases on 2 of them in each truck bed. And then they had a shipping container thing. I mean, it looked like a shipping container, but smaller and half the size. And the thing that was different about this is I had a cylinder on the front of it that was towards the truck. It was like parallel to the ground, just a cylinder right on the top of this thing. And for years, I thought, okay, like there's got to be oxygen supply or like a vacuum sealing thing that you would, because obviously I'm thinking it's drugs. I was like, okay, so this is a very advanced way to do that. Just years of thinking of this. And come to find out, when I gave my speech in DC on that Saturday for the Disclosure Project with Dr. Greer, he's got a lot of people coming out of the woodwork, by the way. And this gentleman, I'm not going to give any detail. I know a little bit about him, but he works in some of these projects that some very controversial facilities. He's aware of what was going on. After I gave my presentation of this, he confirmed, he says, no, he's like, I don't want to leave Michael hanging out there, but I was not expecting to come and talk to you about this. And he went explaining what the operations do, why they do it, and what they were using them for. And he says, there's not drugs that they're putting in these shipping containers. He says it's humans.
Human trafficking.
Yes. His own words. And, of course, and he also wants to come forward, at least with him and 30 other people that are involved with that part of the work. But it was very disheartening to actually get that information relayed to me, because here I'm thinking for years it's drugs and it's a much sinister thing. But it makes sense because they use natural disasters that people are going to be missing anyway.
Yeah.
Scoop up people.
I mean, I've been covering human trafficking this year.
Right.
And that's, a lot of the human trafficking comes from third world countries in distress. You're in a third world area.
Yep.
In distress. Right after an earthquake would be, it's prime.
Yeah.
Prime.
Now think about that for a moment, folks. An earthquake happens and then a subsequent tsunami that kills hundreds of thousands of people. And you've got an area that has been devastated by a natural disaster. It is prime pickings, so to speak, for one, if they are into trafficking humans, to target that area, kidnap people, because who's going to say different, right? Either, the earthquake / tsunami killed them. They're missing listen, thousands of people are still missing from those disasters that happened when, and there was a couple of incidents of earthquakes / tsunamis hitting multiple countries. And so imagine an organization that has access to a flying saucer craft that could utilize that craft to go to these places, sit in the jungle, a mile, 2 miles out from the beach, have the ability to be able to kidnap survivors or people that survived the natural disaster and then traffic them. Shout out to those of you in the chat. Hey, Chris Harris, good to see you. Queen's Throne in the building. I see you, Emmanuel Briggs, in the building. Good to see you all. We are just talking about, we've kind of landed over here to this because we're talking about human beings that have access to some high technology, flying discs, craft that can be in a place in the snap of your fingers, right? They're not flying like normal airplanes. They're anti-gravity type engine. It's not like your normal engine that we're ever so used to, right? With cars and airplanes. But people that work in the aerospace industry, like your Boeings and your Lockheeds, there are groups, teams of people that are doing everything they can to reverse engineer that sort of technology. They have reasons to reverse engineer that type of technology.
Time to do a human trafficking operation.
Right.
How big were the containers?
I would say probably 8 feet and 10 feet, 8 feet tall, 10 feet within.
So like maybe half a Connex box?
Yeah, about that.
Okay.
And they were kind of like on the trailer that was underneath was kind of like a regular Humvee trailer that you would see kind of pull stuff, something like that.
How were they being lifted into the craft?
So they were driving onto this platform that was angled, so it would hit and it just raise up and they're just driving on this ramp.
Oh,
but the whole thing, yeah, but the whole thing was a ramp.
Okay.
Like a circular ramp. And I mean, obviously I can't see what's on the other side of it, but I'm assuming because it's a circular pattern that it's going to be the same on the other side. Because they would drive onto this platform, and at that point I saw all the doors open. 4 guys would come out, and then I'd go back to what we're facing here with these guys searching our stuff, asking us questions, taking our IDs, trying to intimidate the crap out of us. And so I can see the guys come out of the truck. And that was making me think too, like at a tactical advantage, we didn't have that. There's only 6 of us, basically trained infantry Marines. And there's these guys here that are, doing this operation and very skilled, very methodical, very calculated, very precise. And if there's 8 of them, and then all of a sudden every single truck has 4 of these guys, I know that it's not just these guys that are running the perimeter. They could have been 40 or 30 or 40 people.
Yeah.
Could have been a platoon size element. And the fact that we have no concealment, we barely have any concealment, because if we were to run and bank off the sides here to go to our flanks, they could just engage us. There's nothing to hide behind.
Yeah.
Vegetation ain't going to stop bullets, but so there's a lot of questions I have too, because it's, obviously if we would have engaged them, then the whole rest of the force behind us would know about it because they'd heard the commotion.
Yeah. How many containers do you estimate were put into the craft?
4, because I saw 4 trucks.
4 containers.
Yeah. And there could have been more, but at that point where we saw, we could have, because we stumbled onto this thing. We ruined their operation, so to speak, because we weren't allowed to see that.
Let's talk about the craft.
Okay.
How big was it?
300 feet is what I'm estimating, about a football field. And the reason why I say this is because we flew on CH-53 Super Stallions. I'm sure you're familiar with those, your time as a SEAL. They're roughly 100 feet. All right. So from nose to tail, if you lined up 3 of them, it'd fit 3 of them under this craft, because I can see, especially the operation behind us, you kind of see them off in the distance. So you try to gauge, as a Marine, you're always trying to judge distance, you know what I mean? Because if you're having to engage, but lo and behold, we end up having a surprise right here happen with these guys. But that's how I know it was around 300 feet.
Okay. That's a, and it was circular.
Circular. It's like an octagon because it had like corners on it. That was like an octagon shape, but still circular.
Could you see was it one smooth piece of metal?
No.
Was it panels?
Panels. Yep.
How were they?
Now that when he said there were panels, that really got my attention, because if you've researched this topic the way I have over my entire life since I was a little girl, right? One of the things that really sticks or stands out when it comes to a lot of these craft is it's always, a lot of times described as if, you know, it's one solid piece. There usually aren't panels and rivets and that sort of a thing. It, depending, I guess it would really depend on how mature the civilization is that's making the craft. But he said there were panels, right? And that definitely got my attention. And it makes me wonder, are companies like Boeing and Lockheed, are they in possession of experimental craft like this? And have they sold any of these craft? And are they being used by, private parties, et cetera, et cetera? There's no question that, again, there are teams that work for these companies, Boeing and Lockheed and these aerospace giants, whose entire goal and job is to find craft that have UFO craft that have been, taken down, however they've been taken down, to reverse engineer this craft. There's alliances and agreements that are happening between our government and engineers and other employees at these aerospace giants like Lockheed and Boeing, because our government needs, aerospace engineers who understand the flying and the physics of flying and et cetera, right? So think about that.
How? Just describe more. Were there windows?
So
were there?
There were not
openings?
windows. Nothing I could see like that. It just had that Vanta black vent-looking things on each corner. Is all I saw with that, and it had like a octagonal scale pattern that went through it. It honestly reminded me kind of like a design for an F-22 Raptor.
Okay.
I like the top of it kind of looks like that.
Yeah.
That's what it kind of reminded me of with it, because it would transition those colors. So I suspect, I've had people I've talked to about this to say, well, Lockheed Martin has reverse engineer stuff that's circular. Raytheon, they have triangular craft. And they said it might have been Lockheed because Lockheed also made the F-22.
Interesting.
Similar design concept. Now that I think about it, right? Because at this time, you're not really thinking about it. You're like, I'm more concerned with these guys and who the hell they are. So after we witnessed the last truck going on there, and we're still dealing with that. I got searched already, of course, and I'm just paying attention to what's going on. I'm making sure my guys are good too. And all of a sudden, the trucks, we never saw them again. They were not on that platform. There was like boxes and stuff that were on that platform. And so I'm assuming they either drove off on the other side or disappeared or where they went. I don't know. But all of a sudden, we noticed that this platform raises off the ground by itself. It doesn't make any noise, by the way. It doesn't disturb anything.
Before it started gaining elevation,
yeah.
How high off the ground was this?
The actual craft?
Yes.
I would say probably 20 feet.
Okay.
Yeah, good distance. And the platform rose up, but I'd say like the platform was up several feet, right? Probably maybe 5-6 feet, because it was, from the distance, probably about a half an inch.
I mean, I'm envisioning the way you're describing this, I'm envisioning an octagon.
Yep.
Rotating clockwise with a drop ramp similar to maybe something you would see on the back of a C-130, C-17, but circular.
But circular and separate. There's no cables. There's no...
Okay.
Yeah.
Was the ramp attached to the craft?
No.
Wow.
So there was just an opening.
There was just an opening. Like the bottom part of the craft, that was what I'm assuming, because that's where I saw it lift up and go into.
Wow.
It was like the bottom part. It was like the floor itself was like the platform, and they were just rolled up, right? But at the same time, the top part leveled a little bit and went down to meet with this. And as that happened, you start to see it rise up past the tree line. And it's not like a super fast and just rapid. It's just like kind of slow. As that's going on, the rotation has not changed. The audible hum has not changed. But
it's not like somebody hit the gas and you hear a different.
Yeah, it's nothing like
noise.
that.
It's
just constant.
Okay.
Each point on that octagonal shape started to illuminate colors. Like, it was just one color per point. It was red, it was green, it was yellow, and it was blue. It was the only colors I saw, and it was rotating, right? As soon as it got to the top of the tree line, like cleared the trees, this thing shot off to the left. And to the left was the ocean, by the way. This was going west.
How far to the left was the ocean?
Probably a good 1.5 miles, maybe.
That's it?
Yeah.
So you're right on the coastline.
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably, I would say it could be 1.5 miles to 3 miles, I'd estimate, because I mean, that's just estimation. I don't really know, because it took us a little bit when we landed into the near Padang City, because we landed at the airstrip, and then we took like a several minute flight going from southwest to like northeast part, roughly. So I'd say probably a couple miles to kind of estimate. And like I said, it didn't change pitches of noise or anything, and it just completely shot off. I mean, it's just like a blur that went left. Didn't make a sonic boom like you'd see a fighter jet when you see the pressure that, the way that happens. It didn't disturb any of the trees like rotor wash would do on a helo or a jet flying the map of the earth and leaving exhaust and blowing the, you kind of see Top Gun movies when it cranks up on that. Nothing. There were even coconuts that you could visibly see on these trees. None of them were disturbed.
No.
Listen, that's an incredible story by Michael Herrera, who again went on the Sean Ryan show, the SRS show. I dropped a link in the live chat so that you all can go and look at this episode titled Michael Herrera, U.S. Marine Encounters UFO Black Ops Human Trafficking Operation. This is SRS number 66, part 1. You'll definitely want to go and watch the entire interview. Now, when people like Michael Herrera give detailed information like he has regarding, an incident of running into, a UFO like this, when pilots describe incidents of running into UFOs, a lot of times people will take what those people are saying a lot more serious than they will, your normal, ma or pop at home one night who happens to see a UFO in the sky. Michael was on a mission with other Marines when this happened. Again, this happened. Hey, what's up with a Hood Smokers podcast? I shouted you out at the beginning of this live. But think about it again. We're talking about a country that has just been decimated by an earthquake / tsunami that later hits it, killing thousands of people. And it's prime pickings for people that engage in things like human trafficking, because these people go missing. If anyone looks for them, hey, we just had a huge natural disaster. And they're probably missing from, the earthquake and subsequent tsunami that occurred. That is so scary to think that there are people that are targeting populations like that to traffic them. You all, human trafficking is a $1 billion business. $1 billion. There are people that are selling their loved ones, their relatives, their own children to be trafficked. There was a photo that I seen yesterday or day before from, I think it was like 1912, 1913. It was in the early 20th century, in the early 1900s. And it was a mother that had a sign up in her yard and was selling one of her children, selling her children because she needed money. There was no law back then that stopped her. And it was something that a lot of people engaged in, a lot of mothers engaged in, that were stricken with poverty. And it's still going on. Believe that. It's still happening to this day. So, with all of that being said, we started out talking about how the Boeing Starliner is making strange sonar-like noises. I know that, again, really freaks, every astronaut out up there in the ISS. They're probably already freaked out that this craft is sitting there docked to the space station, and God forbid if anything happens, like an explosion or anything that could cause the ISS any problem whatsoever. Hopefully it will undock on September 6th when it returns uncrewed back to Earth. Hopefully it will undock without any issues. Again, it's supposed to be an automated, piloted return to Earth. So we'll see. I'll tell you this, if the way Boeing acts with their aircraft here on Earth says anything at all, we all need to just be on guard for whenever this craft comes back. It's just crazy that Boeing sent these 2 astronauts to space in this craft that had issues like this with the thrusters and helium leaks and all of that. Again, they've spent $1.5 billion. And we have real big issues happening at home with Boeing aircraft, and, talks about how the quality control process is flawed. Again, we're talking about the deaths of almost 400 people back in 2018 and 2019. So Boeing is a huge company. They have got a lot of money and teams, as I mentioned before, that consider it competition to find, a UFO craft and reverse engineer a UFO craft. It is a competition between companies like Boeing, Lockheed, Raytheon. They are absolutely competing to be the first ones, right? So anyway, shout out to each and every one of you that came through the live stream. Shout out to those of you on Twitter. We've got about 60 people up, connect to the live watching. Much appreciated. I will be back live at a later time to talk about a mass UFO sighting in Palmdale, California, Lancaster, California, and even in Hawaii. There are multiple videos, multiple pieces of videos / photos of what appears to be a mass UFO sighting that was reported by hundreds of people. If you just search Palmdale UFO or California UFO in any social media engine, you will start seeing some of the videos that were taken on the night when this mass UFO sighting occurred. So I will be back live to talk about that and to take a look at some of these videos of this mass UFO sighting from the shores of California to Hawaii, baby. Before I get up out of here, guys, allow me to pay a few bills if you don't mind. Shout out to the Leak U community. Please join us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Amazon Music.
Please hit the like. Thank you.
All right, guys. Again, I do appreciate each and every one of you for coming through. Make sure you check out my Spotify podcast platform. I'm also on Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, and Google Podcasts, and a couple others like iHeartRadio. You can also find my broadcast there. Essentially, wherever you get your podcasts, videos from. Definitely make sure you subscribe and check it out. Yeah, man, this is crazy. Again, also, I'm going to update the description with a link to that Sean Ryan, the full part 1 clip. So you can go and check it out. Make sure you subscribe over there as well. You all, I appreciate you all. I'm out of here. I'll see you all on the next one, guys. Until next time. Shout out.
The judgment sentence that you are an asshole. The trial is over. Thank you, everybody.
Let's play a game. You have 10 seconds to take all your stuff and get out of my life. 10, 9, 8.
God bless you, motherfucker.
You're really smart. Like really, really, really smart like I am.